Hey everyone. So I've gotten a lot of questions on how to do a permanent head hack for Garry's mod, and this is a super quick tutorial right here, but I'm going to go over the whole process in this video. What you're going to need first is the model to head hack. I'm using Mark Jefferson, but you can use whatever you want. And I'm putting him on a body that I made in Daz Studio. You can use whatever you want, but I decided to make a custom one just because, I guess. So what I did to get this shape is I imported I imported Jefferson and made the shape off of that. I was basically lining up, making sure the proportions were the same. So I was lining up the elbows, the knees, the crotch, and the shoulders to make sure that he was about the same size. So we don't really know how we don't really know what his body looks like under his clothes from the game, but we can kind of make a rough guess. I just kind of tried to fit his body in there. I figure he's kind of thin and maybe he's a little bit fit, so that's just how I made the body. Something else I noticed is that the fingers were kind of long, so that's how I made them on mine as well. And I also matched I also matched the texture from his face to the body as close as I could, and I think that'll do. So I'm using this as a base, and I'm going to export it, and I've already done that, but uh, if you're exporting this for Blender, then you can use an FBX format. It works pretty well. And you'll want to collect the textures to the folder. That way you have them. And I don't have any morphs on him, but yours might if it had different flexes. You can just leave it off since we're just using it as a base anyway. So once you have it exported, you can import it into Blender. So we're back in Blender and I have my models imported. I have the base here and then Jefferson next to him. I also have two other models. I have Max and then there's someone else ported and then just a standard citizen model. And I always import him just for a scale reference so I know how big or small to make the models. And as tall as Jefferson is, it seems like a Max comes up to about his chin. I think he's a little bit short here, so I made the base a little bit taller. So that's something to consider when making these is how tall they are in the actual game and how tall they'll be in Garry's mod compared to each other. And since he's the right scale, I'm just going to go ahead and delete these. We don't need them anymore. So now that they're both in here, I'm going to delete the body off of him and the head from him. And a quick way I can do that is if I just select the texture that's used for his body and delete it. I'll do the same thing for this, but I'll select textures that are used on the face. Okay. Now this body is completely nude, but I have this block here so it doesn't get, so hopefully this video doesn't get taken down for nudity. So since he doesn't have a face, we can probably delete all of these face bones. I'll leave his head. Then on Jefferson, we can delete his body bones. We want to keep the neck and the head on both of them though. So on one I have just a head and neck, and on the other I have a missing head. So I'm just going to move this into place. My computer would quit being slow. Obviously his neck isn't that long. So a good place to cut this off, I would say, is somewhere around here. Mostly because I want his beard texture still in there. So I'm going to get rid of a little bit more of his neck. So I'm just kind of putting it in place. Definitely zoom out to see how it looks from farther away to make sure his neck's not awkwardly long. You may need to scale yours up or down too. Scale them down a little bit. I think that's about good. So now that they're both in the right place, you can unparent them. Hit Alt-P to clear and keep transformation. Do the same thing on this mesh. That way when you move the bones and mess with them, they won't. That way when you move the bones around, they won't move with it. Just for a second, just long enough to put both of these together. Now on the Daz base body, the name for the neck is neck lower, neck upper, and head. And I'm just going to change Jefferson's to match that. That way when we delete one of them, it's already set up and weight painted decently. You might want to copy and paste them because capital letters do make a difference. So Jefferson only has one neck bone and one head bone, whereas the Daz model has two neck bones and a head bone. So I'm actually going to just name this one down here neck lower, and then the one up here neck upper instead of head. Okay. Now on the Daz, or on Jefferson, I'm going to go ahead and delete those two bones that we just renamed. We renamed them so that the weight painting would match it. So select the bones from Jefferson's face and hold Shift and right click to select the bones on our base model and hit Control J so it joins them together. Now this is one skeleton. Now what we can do is try and line up these necks. I'm going to get rid of more from the base. You should probably try and get as straight a line as possible, but this one's kind of jagged, but this will still work. Okay. So what you basically want to do is get these vertices to all line up. So actually I'm going to get rid of a little bit more from Jefferson. Get rid of that much. That's better. So what I'm trying to do is basically try and make this kind of straight. Or at least a little bit straighter, because it'll be easier to attach that way. Alright, so his neck's a little bit straighter. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. I'm going to leave a small gap in between here. Just so I know, just so it's easier to tell them apart. I got one that I missed, I'll put it back. So this texture is going to look a little bit stretched right here, but that's alright. Alright, so I have them lined up decently. Well, I can bring this one in a little bit more. That's good enough. So before you attach both of these together, because they're separated right now, you'll want to, I think it's over here, Yes, make a copy of the UV map if there's not already one. I'm just gonna make another one. And that's just in case when we're attaching these together, the UV set gets messed up. And that's just how the vertices are laid out in the texture. Sometimes when you attach two meshes together, it'll just completely destroy how you have it set up. And before I do it, I'm going to save. I'm going to name it MJ from Mark Jefferson Headhack. Okay, so something I also have is some flexes on the body. So I'm going to attach the head to the body. I'm gonna right-click on the head, then hold Shift and right-click on the body, and then press and hold Control and press J. So Control J to join them. You can see that it did mess up his head texture that he lost. It doesn't always do that, sometimes it does. So I'm going to go into my UV image editor, and it looks like I just have to reassign it. Okay, and as you can see, it destroyed the UVs that we had. Good thing we saved, right? So let's go back down here and select one of these other UV maps, and it'll put it back to how we had it. Now that the texture is fixed, you can resave it. You'll want to save periodically because things can get messed up very quickly and easily. And I probably should have checked if these flexes were messed up first. Okay, so I tested the flexes and they seem to be working, which is good. So what we can do now is start attaching the mesh together. And I'm just going to hide some of these bones so they're not in the way. I'm doing that last, so just by holding Control and pressing and hold left click. So this is now one mesh, but there's still a big split down the middle. So we'll have to attach it. Now I recommend going into texture mode while you do this. That way you can immediately tell if it gets messed up. So right click, shift, right click on the other vertice, and hold Alt and hit M to merge the vertices. And you can just go at the center. And something that you notice is that the Daz body has more vertices than Jefferson's head, but that can be adjusted and fixed. So I'm actually going to get rid of these two. Yeah, I'm just going to delete this one here. You'll notice when you delete it, now it's not you're missing the faces that were there. But you can bring them back by selecting the one down here and the one up here and pressing F, and it'll draw a line between them. Then right click down here too, press F, and it'll fill it in. Do the same thing over here. You can see how it filled in. Do the same thing between these two. Make that line between them by pressing F. Then go down here and press F. And now you have a face. So joining these two at the center. Do the same thing over here. Delete this vertice. You don't want to just fill in this whole thing with one face. It'll look ridiculous. You really want to keep either triangles or quad shapes. Okay. Actually, I'm going to delete this one too, on both sides. Make sure to keep it even too. If you delete one from this side, delete one from the other side, just to make sure it ends up looking even. You want to do one of these at a time. If you try and do a whole bunch at a time, it'll just make, a lot of times it'll just make one ugly face. Make sure you're selecting just 3 vertices at a time and pressing F to fill it in. You can even go in and edit this a little bit. I did it kind of sloppily. Might end up just skipping some of this if it takes a long time. I'm actually going to bring the neck in a little bit. Okay, that's a little bit, it's a little bit better. So you might want to save after going so far, like if you get a little bit done, make sure you're always going back and checking your flexes to make sure they still work, and checking your texture to make sure it's still lined up correctly, and it is. Because things can get messed up when you're, especially with the flexes when you're joining meshes together. Those two are close enough. I don't know why this has a random vertex in the middle of it. We're on that side too. Oops. Again, I'm just pressing F to make that line between them, then selecting all the corners of the triangle. I'm hitting F again to fill it, and holding Alt and pressing M to merge 2 vertices together. Another stray vertex, I mean. Oh, there it is on this side too. Actually, I'm going to pull these back a little bit. I have another extra vertex right here. I'll remove it real quick. Okay, so some of these parts are sticking out really far. Go ahead and edit them back in again. Alright, so I'm going to delete this vertex since I'm just going to delete this vertex since there'd be a big gap there. Alright, I'm almost done. I'm going to go ahead and check my flexes again. My texture is still working. Okay, these are still working. Make sure you're also on the basis frame when you're doing this. I'm going to save. And I'll start working my way back from the middle. I can get rid of these two vertices since this is a lot closer. So some of these are starting to get a little messed up from deleting them and filling them back in, but I'll fix them in a minute. Okay. Just gonna move this over to where it's supposed to be. And you can see that there's a few stretched out vertices. Those are probably these ones. Okay. That was a bit of a hassle, but you can just kind of drag, select one of the faces and drag them back where they're supposed to be. The computer's being very slow doing this. Okay, this is probably supposed to be about here, and this is probably supposed to be about there. It got a little bit messed up because we were splitting and merging some of these over here, but it looks like it's fixed. And if we select the torso, then there's not that one that shoots across the whole texture. Okay, and since I fixed something, I'm going to check my flexes, and if they're good, then I'll save. Good enough. Since both of these are kind of close to this one here, I'm just going to merge both of these together to that one. It's kind of a big, ugly shape, but it's on the back of his head anyway. That's not bad. Alright, again, make sure your flexes work one last time. And they do, if you have any. My textures look correct. I'm going to save it. So now he has the head on there, it's stitched on decently. Now I gotta weight paint it. How about we parent it to the skeleton first? That way it actually moves. And if you want, you can check and make sure these all still work. And they do. No idea what that's for. Okay. And I'm going to hide his arm bones so they're not in my way. Collar looks alright. See how the neck lower looks. Ugh. That should be moving his whole head. You can see the bones are moving, but his head's not. Okay, I was going to weight paint. Oh, it's still named valve biped head. Even though we've changed the name of it. So this is in weight paint, and you can actually hold shift and press and hold left click to get some of the options that are near it, which is pretty convenient. And this should actually be head. But it says that there's two of them. Yeah, this one's not even, doesn't even have any weight to it. Okay. So valve biped neck should probably be, let's change this one to the neck upper bone. It's already got a parent to it, but we'll just get rid of that one. Since this one has more on it. I think this was Jefferson's original weight paint for his neck. Alright, let's see how it looks now. Just from renaming a couple bones. Okay, why is the jaw not parented? Okay, so the head works. Looks a little sharp at some points. That's alright. Can fix it in a minute. Okay, turning the neck upper definitely looks very sharp. See how the neck lower looks. Neck lower is good for the most part, but it looks like it's a little too heavy over here. So let's go into weight paint mode. After I hide some of these bones. Okay. So one thing we can do is we can select the neck. I'm hitting A to select all of the vertices. You want to make sure this down here, this vertex selection is selected so they all pop up. And something you can do is hit smooth and it'll kind of blend the neck out. The spine too. Oh, we don't even have one anymore. Yeah, it doesn't matter. See, neck lower we already did. There it is, neck upper. It kind of cut off right there because that's where the other. This is where Jefferson's neck ended, and this right here is where the base body began, so that's why it's so sharp right there. If you want, you can hold Control and left click one of these blue areas. You can see the weight of it is 2. You can go right over it. But I'm still going to blend it a bit more. If you wanted to avoid blending up here because you don't want to mess up the jaw, you can just unselect it and hit smooth a few times. I'll hit it 3 times. Okay, so now we have head, I think. Yes, this is probably fine, but I'll smooth it down here. Okay, let's see how it looks now. How about I make these into sticks? Okay. We've got chest, upper. And some of this isn't attached to the head for some reason. I'll fix that. Okay, these aren't parented to the head like they're supposed to be, but I'll parent those later. So I'm just looking at the neck right now. Looks a lot better. Still looks bad right there. So I'll go to the neck upper. Really, the bone for the neck upper is way up here. So I really don't need to have it all the way down here. So what I'm going to do is just get rid of some of it. Go to the weight paint and bring it all the way down to 0. And I'm going to hold Alt and left click, and it'll drag this line. And it's making a gradient. So if you wanted to do different weights with this, you can. It's very nice to use. Okay. Just want to put more weight paint on neck lower so it uses this area more. Let's see. Make this a bit put a little bit more weight on it. So you want to make sure you're doing both sides, like how I just wasn't. This right here will allow you to do both sides at once. It looks a lot better already. So I'm going to smooth it. For example, the eyelashes that were originally on the base model's head, and you can see that if I'm pressing select, nothing is being selected. So I can get rid of that one. I think the cornea, the pupil, I think all of these were attached to him. He shouldn't have any face textures. Let's see. Mark doesn't have any body textures, so we can delete that. We'll be keeping his head and hair and his eyeballs for sure. But we can get rid of the eyeballs on the base texture because it doesn't have eyeballs. Okay. So you want to make sure you have your texture set up to how you want them. Remember that these are going to look for the VMT that is named that. And I'm actually going to rename his hands to work with the finger poser. So we have all our bones set up, our texture set up, the headhacks done. The only thing this guy really needs is, since I'm putting him in Garry's mod, if you notice up here that he has 139 bones, but as you know, Garry's mod has a limit of 128, so I still need to do his face posing before I remove those. I already made a tutorial on face posing, so I'm probably not going to show it here. So before I finish him up, the only thing that's needed to do is to get his bones under 128. So I'm going to show you how to do that, even though I didn't do the facial flexes. I'll just save this as a different file. I'll save this as less bones and show you how to do it. So the way I get rid of bones for the Gmod limit is I'll give him full face posing, and so he doesn't really need um, eyebrows because he already has flexes to move them. He doesn't need the eyelids. You do need to keep the eyeball themselves. I recommend keeping at least those, and then the jaw and tongue if you have it. So he doesn't need cheek textures, or cheekbones, I mean. And these, I'll just get rid of those, and those ones. Actually, I don't need to get rid of them, because the bone limit is 125 right now. So we can actually keep all of our tongue bones, we can keep our mouth bones. We only had to get rid of the, I think something from the nose and then the eyebrows, and that brought it down to 125. But the thing about removing bones is a lot of the times it can mess up your weighting. So let's say I removed all of this. Say I removed his lips and then tried to pose him. Because this part of the mesh was attached to that bone and it's gone, it doesn't have anywhere to go. So what you can do is go into weight paint mode, go over to the head if you were getting rid of the lips, and you can now just parent the lips to the head. I would still recommend parenting the upper lips to the head and the lower lips to the jaw. I'm going to show you how to do it real quick. I just select them like that. Make sure I'm getting both sides of it by having this on. And you really don't need very much weight for it to attach to the bone. I'm just going to set it to 0, 1. And as you select it, it'll go back over there. So I'm going to go to the jaw now. Click on those. And then it was weighted very quickly. So he doesn't have any lip bones, but their bottom ones are weighted to the jaw. And the top ones are weighted to the head. That's basically how I get rid of bones for the 128 bone limit. Now that everything's basically done, for the tutorial. The only thing you would have to do is you'd have to make a collision model, which I've already done in my other tutorial, so I won't go over it now. Then just set up your QC for compiling, and that would be it. So I gotta recompile them. Okay, so as you can see, I just set up the textures for the face and the torso just so you could see them in Half-Life Model Viewer. You can tell there's a very big noticeable seam right there. So what I'm going to do is kind of blend these two textures together so it's a lot less noticeable. So what I'm actually going to do is go into Blender, bring over the UV editor. I'm going to select the head, and this is showing us where on the texture that these fall exactly. You can unselect things and select things to see where it is. But I'm just going to leave it like that. And something you can do is export this, put it on the desktop, mark face UV. Okay, and then I'm going to go find the torso texture, this one, and you can see where on the texture that the vertices are going to be. So I'm going to export this one. I'll just name it torso UV and throw it on my desktop. So what I want to do is get that face texture and the torso texture and open them up in paint.net along with these UV textures. So what I'm going to do is copy and paste this in a new layer so that we can see it better and see how it lines up. And I'll do the same thing for the face. Oh, zoomed in way too far. So right along this line is where the texture for the face ends. So we want to try and blend the material from kind of up here and downward. And then on this one, where our neck is, we want to blend it from here and upwards. Actually, I don't know if that's part of the neck or not. I can check. The way I can do that is select them in here and then hide them. So this very outer edge of both of these is where the back of the neck is. So I'm looking at this just to get a reference of where to put my textures. Okay. I'll put this on multiply so it's not as in the way. So this kind of has a base texture up here, so I'm just going to take that using my using my eyedropper tool. Now let's go in the very middle of the neck. Actually, I'll go right where it leads off, right where it left off, right there. And I'll just make a new box. So that's the base texture for the body. And for the head, it leaves off right here. So I'll just take it from right there. So I'm just going to blend these two colors together. If you really wanted, you could get the numbers for this one, then get the numbers for this one, and then get directly in between them. I'm just going to take the quick way and blur it. So around there is what color you want to make the base in between them. So on this one, and I'll do this in a new layer so it doesn't mess anything up, I have to have it blend into this texture. And then on this one, I have to have it blend into that texture. Put this on multiply and bring it up so we can see it. And I'm just going to get a brush with this color on it. And I'm going to take the hardness down so it's kind of blurry. And I'm just going to go over one block for him. And in fact, we can blur it a bit so it blends more evenly. So I'm going to blend it at 30. You gotta make sure that by the end of this, the end of where the vertices touch, that it's this color. So I'm just going back and making sure that at least the edge of this has that color on it. Okay, so that's how his head texture now looks. That's how it originally looked. Kind of dirty and gross down there. That's a bit cleaner. So we can save this. If you're afraid to overwrite your original texture, you can just put a 2 after it. Do the same thing for this. Blend the edges of these into that color. Make sure this is somewhat down here a bit. I might want to go 2 or even 3 blocks. So I'll actually go 3 blocks. And then for this, I think it's also 3 blocks, but I'll check it in Blender just to be sure. 3 blocks as well. So I'm not doing it from this way, I'm actually doing it from that way. And from this way inwards. Okay. So over here, his head is over here. Or actually, this is the back of the neck. And then his head is up here. So I'm going to go 3 blocks down, or 3 spaces, and just blend that texture up. Do the same on this side, go 3. And then we can blur it. I think I was said it's 30. Yep, so let's blend it 30 again. Okay. So that's our new texture, so we can save that one. Again, I'm going to name it a new texture so it doesn't overwrite the original. Okay. So the way that we've done this, my computer would quit freezing, I can show you. What we basically have is that. That's how it's going to look on the model, is his neck will blend into that, and it's kind of bad down here, so I'm actually going to lighten some of it down here, or make the transition a bit better. Okay, so to make this transition a little bit nicer, I'm just going to get the Gaussian blur again. So I'll see what that looks like. I'll blend it really far. That way that color spreads out even further across this. Okay, so I want to make sure I still have the texture touching the end of this. So I'll go back over it again. I think that blended a lot nicer that second time around. So I'm just going to drag this across the very edge. And the same for the sides, which is this line here. Okay, that's blended a little bit nicer, so I'm going to resave this. So now that it's saved, I'm just going to reconvert this real quick, and then test it out and see what it looks like. Okay, so I have the new textures converted in their correct folder. I placed the old ones, so let's see what it looks like. I think that looks perfect. And if you zoom in, you can see there's a little bit of a blur, but it's a lot less noticeable than that seam, I'll tell you what. The last thing would be to, if you're having issues with it looking very bumpy, like it still looks like a giant seam, what you can do is do that same method I just showed you, but blend the bump map, or the normal map, whichever one. That tends to look a little funny. So just blend that same area right there on the bump map and the spec map if it's there, and it'll look perfect. The reason it's not showing up here because I don't have his bump map on. You're just seeing the flat texture. But if you had a bump map, you might see you might see a little more of a seam there. But that's pretty much it. Down here for skin number 2, he would have wet. He'd have wet skin in a blue shirt. Oops, that's shit. He'd have a blue shirt, not blue shit.